22 million housing gap. The Deputy Governor Economic Policy of the CBN, Dr. Kingsley Obiora, who stated this, said the CBN has collaborated with the federal government and the private sector to stimulate the economy and prevent economic scarring through various interventions targeted at households, SMEs, health, agricultural and manufacturing sectors. Now, still with the Central Bank of Nigeria, the Apex Bank says it has released regulatory guidelines and framework for mobile money services in the country to create an enabling environment for orderly introduction and management of the services. The guidelines states that the mobile money operators shall not carry out the following activities: grant any form of loans, advances and guarantees directly or indirectly, accept foreign currency deposits, deal in foreign exchange market, except as prescribed in Section 4, subsection 1 of the extant guidelines for licensing and regulation of payment service banks in Nigeria. Insurance underwriting, accept any closed scheme electronic value as a form of deposit or payment, establish any subsidiary, undertake any other transaction which is not prescribed by these guidelines, and any other activities that may be prohibited by the CBN. Now, risk currencies hovered above their recent lows against the dollar and the yen this Monday. A look at the currency market is next. Nigeria, Ghana, the Democratic Republic of Congo and Ivory Coast say they want the world's richest countries to reallocate at least $30 billion of new money from the International Monetary Fund, IMF, towards investments in Africa to help countries battling the effects of coronavirus and climate change. Ministers of the 4 African countries stated this in an open letter to the leaders of the group of 20 leading economies, where they also urged the rich nations to increase support for poorer countries' COVID vaccination drive, while requesting the G20 leaders to unleash at least $30 billion of that money to a new liquidity and sustainability facility and the African Stability Mechanism. The finance ministers noted that this will catalyze investments to Africa, reduce the liquidity premium on sovereign bonds offered by middle-income countries, and incentivize green and sustainable link investments. Now, to speak more on what the request by the ministers will do for the country is an economist, Paul Laje, and we'll be talking to him via telephone. You're welcome to the program, Mr. Paul Laje.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you so very much for having me on your show.
Okay, 4 countries seeking financial support worth $30 billion from IMF to combat COVID-19 and climate change. What's your thought on that?
Around the world, particularly with new strain of COVID discovery, we now have Delta strain of COVID. It's so important that African countries, particularly Nigeria in this case, because when you look at population around the world, a study of population that we did, America has the largest population in North America, and in that region, it has the largest number of incidents, both casualty and those that have contracted the disease. When you go to South America, you find that it's Brazil, and the same is applicable in Brazil. When you talk of Asia, the largest one in Asia is China. After that, you have India. So these are huge concerns that these countries are faced with. So when you now talk of Africa, Nigeria and all some countries surrounding Nigeria, I think it's within wisdom. It's just for us to apply wisdom to support Nigeria. Even Indonesia is facing with huge population, is facing some level of challenges right now. So whatever IMF is being requested by these four countries, 30 billion US dollars in this regard, I think it's a good thing for our International Monetary Fund to consider to support them with, so that beyond just climate change conversation, COVID is a reality that the world is facing right now.
Now, do you see this catalyzing into investment to Africa, as well as reduce the liquidity crisis?
For me, liquidity has been a major issue. When you look at revenue in Africa, is an impoverished continent, not because there are no rich natural resources, talents, and also funding to bring out the quality in Africa is still missing. Besides, when you look at the word you mentioned, investment is required for Africa to even produce vaccines for over 1 billion people to be vaccinated, and some of these will not come as importation from India. Whether we like it or not, any resource that leaves Africa will further make Africa to be backward. I understand some economies will claim competitive cost advantage, but the truth is that when you claim competitive cost advantage, you ask, what is Africa giving in returns to vaccination? Therefore, if you truly want to support Africa, we should be looking at investment outlay in the area of health, in the area of research, so that African children outside the continent can come and support their home.
Well, about the special drawing rights, it seems like it tends to favor the advanced countries, because countries that are actually having issues with debt, they won't benefit much from it. What's your take on that?
Well, when you look at countries with debts, you need to be concerned about record keeping in Africa. For us, in our organization, we believe COVID cases and casualties that relate to COVID may be more than what we have generally in Africa because of poor method of capturing data and the institution that has not developed regarding lives. Things may be happening in some villages without proper access to medical and health care, where people may not even know what the thing is about. That's it. Another thing that concerns, where you should not just focus on developed countries and having more, but countries with huge population, particularly among these countries, is Nigeria. None of them has escaped the strike of COVID. As I speak, only Nigeria, among countries with largest population in different continents, they've all had bitter states of COVID. My concern is the third wave of COVID has started raising its ugly head. I pray and I hope it will not take Nigeria down. The world, therefore, must come to the aid of Africa through Nigeria and 3 other countries that are making this request to quickly support by the way of vaccination, by the way of climate change support, so that Nigeria will not be on our meals.
Okay, now let's look at the $650 billion allocation, which is the largest ever of its currency reserve. That means the IMF currency reserve. The process is expected to be completed in August. Won't that add to the debt burden of some countries?
Definitely, it will add to the debt burden of some countries. Debt matters. But for me, I am thinking that when you talk about debt, it should be interesting so that you don't have two things to deal with. On one hand, African countries that are poor, that are making revenue in their local currency, for instance, Naira, have to battle with exchange rate differentials that keeps fluctuating because of inability to produce as much as they need, and they have to resort back to foreign reserves or their federal reserves, which of course is dwindling, simply because they don't have enough electricity, they don't have human resources capable to produce what they consume and also to produce what is required and could be exported to the rest of the world. So that's what African countries and Nigeria more importantly. Therefore, even though Africa may think they will get debt relief, but the component of what is in their debt profile may not be that substantial. To that extent, I am a proponent of the position that IMF may have special concession, interest-free concession for African countries, and perhaps particularly for those who want to invest in the area of health and, more importantly, climate change.
Thank you very much, Mr. Paul Alaje. Thank you very much for your contribution.
Thank you so very much for having me.
Okay.
Have a beautiful afternoon.
You too. Now, moving on, the Nigerian Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Mines and Agriculture, NACIMA, is encouraging Nigerian businesses to shed the toga of fear of Nigeria becoming a dumping ground and step out boldly to compete and dominate the African economy with the opportunities offered by the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA. President of NACIMA, John Odegbala, who stated this, noted that competition under the AFCFTA will strengthen Nigerian businesses rather than drawing them, while emphasizing that shoes and leather products that are made in Aba go as far as Guinea, Gambia and Cameroon. He added that other areas of focus will be creative sector, harnessing technology and digital ecosystem, enhancing gender and youth empowerment, as well as strengthening the collaboration between the private sector, diplomatic missions and development agencies. Now, on the commodity market, gold prices inch higher on Monday on persistent concerns around COVID-19, with investors awaiting U.S. inflation data due this week and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell's testimony. As Nigeria marks the 50th anniversary of its membership of the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, OPEC Secretary General Mohammed Sanusi Barkindo has acknowledged the unique contribution of President Muhammadu Buhari and the successful 5-decade partnership. Barkindo said President Buhari is the only currently serving head of state who worked as a head of OPEC delegation earlier in his career from May 1976 to September 1978, having served as Commissioner for Petroleum NNPC and head of Nigeria's delegation to OPEC. OPEC Secretary General said all the OPEC family know the enormous debt of gratitude owed the president for the pivotal role played in the historic achievements. He applauded his inspirational leadership, visionary courage, and diplomacy instrumental in bringing together OPEC and non-OPEC countries and reaching consensus in recent years, particularly through the adoption of the Declaration of Cooperation on 10th December 2016 and the Charter of Cooperation signed on 2nd July 2019. Now, the rain is now almost daily in most parts of southern region of the country, especially the south-south, and coping with the cold that accompanies the weather requires using different things. Footwear is one of such, but dealers say the patronage is not encouraging. Joy Ubani reports.
Wearing suitable footwear is important to most people. However, rainy season is a time when footwear takes a beating. Trekking through the water, a strong pair of rubber boots or sports sandals will help in a wet ground and also comfort the feet.
During the rainy seasons, we have more patronage than dry season. People prefer to buy rubber slippers, anything rubber footwears, just to help.
Recently, rain footwear has come in different designs, colors and shape, which range from 2,000 naira to 3,000 naira and above for both adults and children. As the rain intensifies, some dealers of these footwears in Uyo lament on low patronage.
During this period of time that we usually sell, but this period, 2021, is quite different. People say they don't have money. And we don't have much patronage at all. Even those that buy cannot return the money. They say that they cannot make sales.
It's based on what the customer wants. So the cheaper ones are there. The ones that are costly are also the which of quality.
With the increase of rainwater around the environs, especially during school hours for children, it is the hope of dealers of rubber footwears to experience high level of patronage in their business. In Uyo, Joy Obani for Business Express.
Now, Business Express returns after the break.
The Nigerian equities market ended last week on a negative note as the all-share index depreciated by 0.57% from 38,210 points in the previous week to 37,994.19. Weekly market report from the Nigerian Exchange Group shows that market capitalization also declined by 0.62% at 19.796 trillion naira. 1.348 billion shares worth 12.1 billion naira exchange hands in 21,581 deals. A summary of price changes shows that 44 equities appreciated in price, 22 equities depreciated in price, while 90 equities remained the same through the week. The financial services industry topped the activity chart with 892.2 million shares worth 7 billion naira. The ICT industry followed with 110 million shares, while the conglomerates industry occupied the third place in the week. Fidelity Bank, FBN Holdings, and Zenith Bank, measured by volume, were the three equities that were traded the most. All other indices finished last week higher, with the exception of the NGX All Share, NGX Main Board, NGX Consumer Goods, and NGX Lotus 2 indices, while the NGX ASEM and the NGX Growth indices closed flat.
Hello and welcome to the Global Market Review. In Asia, economic news has it that China's central bank announced Friday a 50 basis point cut in its reserve requirement ratio for all banks effective from July. Consequently, stocks in Asia Pacific rose on Monday, with shares in Japan and China leading gains regionally. Nikkei topped 2.25% to close 28,569.02. Shanghai Composite topped 0.67%, and the Hang Seng Index also added 0.62% to close 27,515.24 as at its final hour of trading. European stocks were trading around the flat lines on Monday as markets struggled for stimulus. Investors continue to watch the coronavirus situation in the region. DAX dipped 0.14%, FTSE 0.57%, and CAC 40 also dipped 0.38%. In the United States, the Dow is set to retreat from a record, with futures down 100 points to start the week. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures declined after the measure closed out the prior week at a record. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average shed 144 points. S&P 500 futures fell 0.2%, while Nasdaq 100 futures bucked the trend and gained 0.20%. It's a bearish start for Africa's stocks as most stocks are trading negative territory as figures continue to come in on Monday. Nairobi's all-share dipped 0.24% to close 175.22. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 also dipped 0.37%. Namibia's overall index dropped 0.94%, and Tunisia's Tunidex also depreciated 0.11%, while Ghana's GSE Composite was positive at 0.05% to close 2,652.54. That's the Global Market Review segment. I am Bossode Able. So, Musa,
Thank you, Bosede.
that's the much we have on the segment.
Thank you, Bosede. Well, that ends the program. Business Express continues on Tuesday, 9:30. Be safe out there.
NTA, you can't beat the rich.
Hello and welcome. It's time for another interesting package of
Everything Music.
Angelina, you the cool in my temperature. If you call, I go come deliver.
This is Talking Movies.
In times of old, the world was full of wonder.
Welcoming you to your weekend for today.
It's time to use our voice.
Beyond Six Packs.
Bills, 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 bills.